So we're just going to have a nice red wine tasting here, and hopefully I'm going to show you a few of the things that you need to look for that are going to be an indication either of the origin of the wine or of the quality of the wine. So when we do tastings, there's three different things that we look for. First of all, we observe the colour and see how that affects the wine. Then we think about what we can smell on the wine, the aromas, and then what we can taste on the palate. So the first thing I'm going to do is have a look at the colour of this wine. So the best thing to do is to hold it up against a nice white background and just tilt the glass away from you. And I can see in this wine the deepest part of the wine, closest to the stem, which we call the bowl, that's really kind of dark purple, almost black. So that's indicating quite a young wine. And then when we look at the wine as it gets to the edge of the glass, as it gets to what we call the rim, it's still quite a lot of colour against the rim there. So that again is another indication of youthfulness in wine. The difference between red and white wine is really the tannins, and tannins are the things that give you that mouth feel to it, give you that puckering sensation on the inside of the mouth. And they're also the things that add colour to the wine. And what happens over time is the little chains of molecules of tannins start to polymerize and start to form long chains, and they get longer and longer and longer, and eventually they can't be held in solution anymore. So they drop out and they fall to the bottom of the bottle as a deposit. So that's why a red wine, as it gets older, it fades in colour and it forms a deposit. That deposit literally is the colour dropping out of the wine. Give this wine a nice swirl and then just hold it up to eye level and just wait. And what you'll start to see is forming around the inside of the glass of what we call either tears or legs. So that is glycerol. And wine is made up majority of water plus glycerol plus grape solids. And glycerol is really an indicator of either alcohol or sugar. So if we were to do this with something like a glass of port or a sweet wine that is very high in sugar and very high in alcohol, you would start to see those tears or legs form pretty quickly and start running down the inside of the glass more or less immediately. Now we can see those tears that they are pretty well defined and they're pretty easy to see in the glass. That would indicate to me that that wine is probably a little bit above the normal alcohol. So the next thing we're going to do is smell. So the nose on this wine is quite youthful. The main thing that we get initially is called primary fruit, and that's the sort of the really sort of raw blackberry, blackcurrant, deep cherry, kind of raspberry fruit that comes off this wine. Also we get hints of a little bit of smoke character to it, which probably means that it's been aged in wood barrels. It's giving that slightly smoky, almost caramel character to it. And it's a little bit meaty, it's a little bit sort of rustic and gamey. So the next thing I'm going to do is taste. So the kind of flavours that I'm getting with this wine are pretty similar to what I got on the nose. So I'm getting lots of that black currant, some black cherry, some raspberry, a little bit of smoke from the barrel aging, a slightly meaty, almost bacony kind of character to it, and also a bit of licorice root just on the back of the palate there. And the wine tastes very balanced, meaning that there's a certain amount of tannins, certain amount of alcohol and acidity, but it's all kind of quite linear. It's not sort of sticking out too much. The alcohol's is a little bit higher than normal, but you can't taste it. So it's a very balanced wine. So with this being quite a full-bodied, quite youthful wine, I think you could go with something you could match it food-wise with something quite rich. So a good steak, something maybe like a beef Wellington, maybe something like a good stew, like a daub of beef or venison. So something quite wintry, something quite hearty, quite rustic, sort of big full-bodied flavours would be perfect with this style of wine. So, cheers.